Here.
Councilmember Wilson,
Here.
City Manager Knopf,
Here.
Chief of Police Connor,
Here.
Finance Director Dillingham. Are you there, Cheryl?
She was here.
Yeah. Okay, I'll mark her as here. Community Development Director Caldwell. Water Roadway Superintendent Jensen.
Here.
Wastewater Superintendent Taylor.
Here.
And City Clerk Dunham's present. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Public presentations. Are there any public presentations? City Manager or City Clerk?
Mayor Garnes, this is Kyle, not the city manager. If folks watching on TV or on YouTube take a look right now at the screen, we do have the public comment phone number, which is listed, and the call-in number and the meeting ID. And I see that on Access Humboldt, at least that you have to move the number up. So let me see if I can do that real quick.
It's very clear. It was very clear on my screen, Kyle.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So that number will be periodically flashing on your screen. So if you want to call in, that number is available to you. With that, we haven't, as far as I can tell, we've not received a call yet.
We can't see it. Okay. Thank you.
And we haven't received any online public comment either.
Thank you, Karen.
Sure.
Okay, well, we're just kind of meeting and waiting to see if anyone calls in.
Can't see her.
I'm no longer on mute. Okay. Okay. So we will move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone who wants to remove something from the consent calendar?
I'd like to remove 1 and 2, please.
Dokie. Would any other council member like to remove anything from the consent calendar? An item? Hearing no response, I will then ask for a motion to approve items 3, 4, and 5.
Mayor Guy, move that we approve the consent calendar items 3, 4.
It reads 3, 3, 4, but it's 3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a second? Am I being heard clearly?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Woodall,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Strand,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there, Councilmember Strawn, you're on.
Thank you. I was just on the minutes. So when we had the public comment,
Could you tell us what
page
page we're
2.
referring to, Sue?
page 2,
Please. Thank you.
so Catherine Conant. So do we respond to these people ever, or is there any follow-up from city manager or chief of police? Or I was just wondering if there's any follow-up on these at all. Are we taking this to nuisance committee, or what's happening?
City manager?
I can respond.
Oh, go, city clerk.
I can respond if you'd like.
Whoever
I
has
did
the
respond to her. Okay. I did respond to her because she sent the message in right after our prior meeting, so she missed it by like 1 day. So I did respond to her, and I told her to, anytime she had a complaint about animal control, dogs barking, or anything of that nature, to contact the police department. I gave her the phone number. So I did reply to her, and I told her that her comment would be read at the meeting. So I did follow up with that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then that was it for the minutes. And then item 2, I just wanted to kind of bring that to people's attention that this is happening for 3 council seats open. Anybody interested, hopefully will come to the city and get their applications, and we'll move forward in November for the ballot.
Thank you for bringing that forward. And now is there a motion to approve the items 1 and 2?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk, would you roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Pro Tem Woodall,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Strand,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries. Consent calendar has been approved. Now we'll move on to staff, city manager and staff updates, please. City manager, page 32.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. The staff has been working on our asphalt maintenance paving project for 2020 for this year out on Fern, Aloha, and Riverside Street. So that's currently underway. We're also working on replacement of some of the ADA bump stops. I've also been attending some SCORE meetings for the risk management for the city. That's the Small City Organized Risk Effort. They do our liability insurance and whatnot. And then we're in the phases right now, kind of winding down the volunteer corps for the time being and the food distribution. So just this last Friday, hopefully one of the last food distributions went out on Friday. And so right now we're working with the chamber and with the community resource center to gear up for a potential second wave and prepare for that. So we have been distributing hand sanitizers in the downtown, advising employees of the masking rules and proper etiquette. And so we are also in process of creating a new series of hand sanitizer bottles that we'll also be distributing at some point in the near future. So with that, I'll go ahead and return it to the mayor and see if there's any other questions or comments from the council.
Thank you, city manager. Are there any other questions from council?
A couple.
I have oh,
Go ahead.
I'll hold on.
Go ahead, Julie.
Julie?
Oh, I was wondering if we're going to have any more meetings with the lady from DHS about the homeless situation. I've had a lot of complaints in town this last 2 weeks, and I was just wondering when that's going to happen again.
Yeah, we certainly can invite her back to the council to have a follow-up conversation. I think we are trying to schedule another phone call with the mayor and with our local partners at the Community Resource Center, but we can certainly invite her back to the full council.
Oh, okay. I was under the impression that there were going to be more talks on it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, on a couple questions on the road maintenance project. How far does that go all the way up to Miller?
Yeah, so it'll terminate at the right at Miller. There's currently a cut in the road right now that they did for the transition, so that would be where it terminates.
Because I noticed driving over it Sunday, and then I had somebody call me about it, that it appears fairly uneven. It's like usually when you see new asphalt, it's very smooth. Is that because it's just an overlay, or is?
So it's a maintenance paving project. So it's not one where we're reconstructing the base of the road. Otherwise, it's kind of a trade-off. You're either doing a shorter segment of road to create a better perfect outcome, or you're working with the base that you have and the funding that you have to try to stretch it as far as you can. But that being said, the speed limit, I think, on that road is about 25. It's a residential street, so it's not quite as important as it would be, say, on Wildwood Avenue to have the smoother ride.
All right, thank you. The other question was on the ATP project over on Aloha. Weren't we going to do the sidewalk that continued on down the street, on front of that vacant lot. Was that correct in my understanding?
Yeah, and so the sidewalk was extended to the maximum extent of the scope of the project, but it was never continuing further than the current termination point where it's located right now. So that will have to happen when that parcel is developed down the road.
Was that, I thought that was part of it. We added 3 items to the ATP. If I remember right, it showed the picture of it going down the length of that to the extent of that property.
That's correct.
I
Correct.
remember too. But
Correct. So
Correct.
the maximum extent of the scope of the project is where the sidewalk currently terminates. As the council's aware, there were some modifications done to the intersection that shortened that segment of sidewalk by pushing the sidewalk back.
I'm still not clear on.
We can't
not even
can't
clear
push.
out. I really did think it went all the way to just at the end of actually that vacant lot.
That's my understanding.
No, that would be outside of the scope of the project. So we can't use state funds to do something outside of the scope of the project.
No,
All right.
I understand
I'll have to
that.
go back and find the picture that was showed to the council, because if I'm in error, I'm in error, but I just thought that it showed that we were adding the 3 items of the 5, and then the other 2 were going to be kind of piecemeal of where the poles were, but the 3 items were the 2, one in front of the library, one for the intersection of Davis and Wildwood, and the third one was to do that length there at ELO.
I think we must have all thought that. I mean, if
Yes.
it's not in the contract, it's not at this point, but I think actually I was absolutely under that impression as well. I was under the impression that that's what we were shown. Not
Yes.
even, I felt like we went back and forth. And then at some point we ended up with, okay, it'll go to there, but I don't know.
It seemed like a real reasonable price for what was going on, but the picture I thought showed that. I'll stand down for now until we see something different. It is what it is.
Yeah, if any of you want to come by, I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. But there was never a proposal to do anything outside of the scope of the ATP project. So because that wouldn't be reimbursed by the state.
Well,
the difference is the location of the curb changed, and so the amount of sidewalk that was put in was lowered because the location of the curb was changed.
Is Davis Street on the ATP project?
Okay, so which section?
No.
Okay, maybe I'm confused. So on which you're talking about Davis Street?
Yeah.
I'm talking about ELO.
Oh,
Yeah.
Councilmember Strand may be talking about Davis. I don't know.
Well, didn't we agree on 3 separate areas in front of the city hall, down Davis Street, and also on Eloa? Those were the 3 things we talked about.
So correct. So with Eloa, the location of the curb changed, and that section of sidewalk was shortened. With Davis Street, there was that particular item. I'm not sure that it's going to fit into the budget. So at this point, the sidewalk construction on replacing and upgrading sections on Davis Street, we're probably not going to be able to do that portion, and that's partially because of delays in terms of the project and uncertainty as to what exactly the final design, particularly on Eloa, was going to be.
okay. Well, I don't think we're going to get any further on this topic, but it's a head scratch. Okay.
Mayor Garnes,
Yes.
I have a question on.
Go for it.
Okay. On Eloa, they have put up a stop sign, and I don't know if Councilman Strawn has noticed that it sits way back from where the other stop sign sits. And are they going to move that forward a little bit? It makes it hard to look up and see around the curve if the cars are coming from down from and coming under the freeway. Is it in its permanent spot now?
I think that's a city manager question.
If you want, if you want to come down, Julie, I can show you the design, but I just off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what you're referring to.
Sue, have you noticed that?
Yes, there's a few things. I want to bring up the Hooven project right now that's on Eloa, the beginning.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Sue.
But I was
what
wondering,
were you bringing up?
Hooven project, the project on Eloa. Hooven is the company who's doing it. It's going on Eloa, Fern, around to Riverside. So yeah, that maybe Kyle or Mr. Johnson could answer this. Aren't you supposed to be looking at the city plans, and aren't in fact, I mean, that road is so wavy. There's so many rock pockets already in it. I stopped today and spoke with them, Pat, the project manager that was on site, and they have not straight edged anything. Isn't there any kind of a spec that they have to stick to?
Yeah, there is. So the city engineer recommended a spec, but if you recall, this is just a pavement maintenance project. So it is just a simple overlay of the roadway. In order to make it a perfectly smooth ride, you would have to essentially rebuild the road surface, and so you would be accomplishing a much smaller scale project on that particular road. By doing the maintenance paving, you're able to essentially get more, again, out of a residential rural street with low volume and low speed.
And I understand that it's never going to be perfect. That road was absolutely pitted and had a million potholes in it. But as they ground down and as they're screeding, going across with their paving machine, I mean, they should be able to fill those holes. And the rock pockets that are left that are in the top, as you cross it now, those are going to be puddles. They're just going to ruin that entire piece where those pockets are, and those could have been alleviated. And that's what I stopped and talked to them about today. But I was wondering if anyone from the city is, do we have any inspectors? What's happening?
Well, I don't know if Randy wants to speak to that as the street superintendent. Or...
Yeah, this is Randy. So I have been out there. I have noticed the problems that have been arose from the paving. The foreman that we talked with on last week was not there today, so I didn't speak with him today. There's some methods that could be changed to probably make it smoother, but currently I have not talked to the city manager about the situation that was out there, other than mentioning that the road was kind of bumpy and there are some bad areas. I was out today and they did have the second lane paved. It seemed to be smoother than the first lane, but we weren't able to drive on because they were still paving it. That's all I have.
So, Mr. Johnson, do you have any comments on this?
Councilmember Johnson, I think Councilmember Strawn asked a question of you.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. On all contracts, there is specifications for materials and workmanship.
That's correct.
I'm not exactly sure what specifications are quoted in the contract, but typically for smoothness, there's departure from a 12-foot straight edge. And, it gives limits both transversely and longitudinally. And also it talks about, no rock pockets and junk like that. The texture is supposed to be uniform. And so it really depends on what specs we and Hooven agreed to in the contract. And certainly we need to be enforcing those specs.
Would you be willing to look at that with Mr. Knopp and maybe go over that with him?
Sure, I can do that. Probably be maybe tomorrow morning.
I mean, have you seen it? Have you looked at it?
No, I have not been over that. I have not seen it at all.
Yeah.
So I take a run down there, literally, tomorrow morning, and take a look at it, and then I'll stop by City Hall and chat with city manager if that's acceptable to him.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Strawn. Are there any other comments from other council members?
Yes, I have one more.
Go ahead, Council member Woodall.
Oh, okay. Mr. Manzi called me. He's right on the corner of Eloa and where it goes under into the dip. And he was under the impression that they were going to bring the pavement clear up to the curb or to the driveways. He got a paper saying that. And he was wondering if there's that, as you go around the curve, there's that huge area of gravel. And he was wondering if they were going to pave up to his driveway, as it said in the papers that they sent out. I know that you probably can't visualize where I'm talking about. I mean, the council probably can.
Yeah, no, I did talk to the gentleman. So that area was not included in the paved project. It was not included in the square footage for that particular project. If the council would like to add it in, we can do that and bring back an adjustment for that particular area.
As one person, I'd like to see it because he's taken care, it's not his, and he's taken care of it for a long time, and he has a lot of people turning out and around on the property. Right now, they have all their equipment on the property. I would at least like to see what it would cost to do it.
Council, I actually am not very clear exactly where you're talking about, Julie, so I can't speak to it because I'm not clear where you're talking, but I'm certainly willing to agree that if we can bring back the cost and
that's what,
some kind of a diagram to show us what we're talking about.
Yeah, isn't that across the street?
Well, it's right there on the curve.
Pardon, Sue?
Oh, it's on the curve.
It's on the
Okay.
curve, because he's the one that, as you swing around there, he's got a wider driveway where his driveway goes farther in there, but
Yeah.
it's a curve there on that side. If they're parking equipment there, then that's probably
Yes.
working on the existing surface.
Yeah, exactly.
So, council, what is it that you want here? Julie, I understand what you want. Does anyone else want?
I'd just like to take a look at it.
Is there
I
a
agree with
consensus?
Councilmember Woodall. We just find out what it would cost to bring it up as she's mentioned. See if it's an astronomical price or what.
Okay, so I think that's basically a consensus. City manager, is that something you can do?
We can. Our next regularly scheduled meeting isn't until July, so we would need to have a special meeting for this item. So I'm pulling up right now just the map of the location.
Oh, lovely.
That's right on the turn of Aloha. So what Councilmember Woodall is referring to is the turnout here that abuts the private property area.
Thank
It's
you.
not part of the main road, but it's a side turnout area.
I
No,
see.
but the city has a pump right there, right where your arrow was. I mean, that's a pump station, right?
Over there in the shade.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
there.
Mhm. So. And so what is,
I think it's paved there, though. Maybe Gordon could look at that tomorrow, too. Because I think it's already paved there. I parked right there today. It's already paved. I think it just might have some loose gravel on it that just needs to be swept off.
oh, well, Councilmember Johnson, you're gonna have to get paid if you keep this up.
Free gratis.
Okay.
Mayor Garnes, I have one item that I would like the council to consider.
Go ahead.
These Zoom meetings really aren't working very well for me. And, you know, when massage parlors and barbershops and lots of other weird business opening up this week, I really don't understand why we are not meeting in the council chambers. What is it going to take to get us back to City Hall?
I don't know.
I agree.
Way. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know, Councilmember Johnson. City manager, do you know, are the Board of Soups or other cities back in chamber? Just out of curiosity.
I'm not aware of that, but it is something that we could ask the public health officer about. I know that not all meetings are really allowed to proceed. It has been brought up before, but it really is a question appropriate for the public health officer.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will check with the public health officer, Councilmember Johnson. But
I would sure.
May I say
Just,
something? Oh,
yeah,
I would sure like to be in chamber for our first meeting in July.
well, we will check with the public health officer and we will come back to you with that answer and it'll be appropriate to whatever the answer is. I
would
have
like
to
to
say
comment.
though, Councilmember Johnson, that because Councilmember Woodall and I have had this conversation. The one thing that my feeling is that by the time we staff and council spread out 6 feet apart, then there's going to be no room for public. And so it's still going to have to be shown so that the public can actually call in or whatever to make a comment. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a meeting after we've done it on Access Humboldt, but we look like little bitty things up front. You're not really sure who's talking and you can never, ever see the presenter. So this actually, with the exception of yourself and Councilmember Woodall, this is actually an easier method for the public actually to be engaged if they're not at the meeting and to be able to see us and hear us. Because like I said, I have looked at it and it is not good sound. It is not good visual, but I hear you. And go ahead, Councilmember Woodall.
I agree with Gordon. The first meeting we had, when we had to separate, we did it. The staff was on the call, They weren't there, so there weren't that many people in there. And we had the chairs set up for distancing. And mind you, we never have that many people there. So, I mean, we had plenty of room. It was much easier. It's much easier for me to see people and to communicate. And I'm ready to get back into the council chamber to do this.
Okay, well, we will talk to the health officer. We are way off agenda, so we're going to close this down, and we will talk to the health officer and do whatever it is that the health officer tells us we should do. Are there any other questions on the staff report?
I just have one comment but I think it'll be addressed in the letter to be signed by the mayor. So I'll wait till we approach that.
Okay, thank you. So there are no other questions? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, I had a question for the police chief.
Go for it.
I was just wondering, Chief, if you ran down there today after I mentioned the guys not having, God, I can't think of the term. The person that holds the signs down at the paving on Eloa, they didn't have a person.
Yes, I did.
The person.
I talked to the gentleman in charge, and he said he was shorthanded at the moment, but he would get a flagger out there as soon as he had an opportunity.
Oh, he did later in the afternoon, but I'm glad you talked to him, because that was getting kind of dangerous. Okay, thank you.
And
that was the only question.
He did agree that it needed a flagger.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Hearing none, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is authorize the mayor to sign a letter related to River Bluff Cottages, page 38. Or 39, really. Okay. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. This item, the letter starts on page 39 and proceeds through page 42. So I'm interested to see if there's any additions or subtractions from the letter, but it's there for the council's approval.
I did have a question for it. I would like to know if it's possible to add the most current calls for the police department down to the bluffs to the letter.
I think it's in there.
No, it goes through the end of May.
Oh, through the end of May, I see.
And there's another dozen from the last 2 weeks. There's another dozen calls.
Yeah, so we can get a list current to today.
That would be other than that, I thought it was a really well drafted letter, and it really hammered to the points and pointed out what was said in the council meeting, and I think it's a very good letter to Mr. Dart, and we'll see where we go from there.
I agree. It's a nice letter. Good job. The only thing is the CC. I see you're sending it to Department of Health and Human Services. Are we going to wait for a response before we send one to the state? Do you want to hear a response from Mr. Dart before we do that? I truly think a letter should go to the state if nothing happens here.
I guess I'm confused as to who we would send it to at the state, because the project is operated by the County of Humboldt and DMCO.
But I don't think the County of Humboldt supplied the money. I believe wherever Danco is receiving the money, who's ever funding these projects, need to be aware of the situation that Danco is putting us in.
So, and I think that would be the tax credit allocation committee. I'm not sure that, we can certainly send it to the tax credit allocation committee.
There should be a way to find out who is granting these funds and see to it that they get a letter. But we might want to wait till Mr. Dart responds.
I think I would wait till I think I would give Mr. Dart the the opportunity
Yeah.
to respond and then see if we go any farther. But I would certainly give him that respect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Strawn. Any other comments on this matter? Hearing none, I will call for a motion to approve the, authorize the letter to be signed.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
City Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Woodall,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Strand,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. And we'll move on to ordinances and special resolutions. On page 43, approve resolution 1453-2020, adopting the fiscal year 2021 operating and capital budget and position allocation table. Within that same, I think motion is approving the resolution number 1455-2020, amending and adopting the city master salary table. So they kind of go together. City manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. I'm going to try to pull up this PowerPoint.
This is wastewater Superintendent Taylor. I had a comment. I actually got brought to my attention that the YouTube live stream isn't working right now. So if we don't get public comments from people who are accessing our council meeting via YouTube, just thought I'd bring that to everybody's attention.
Thank you.
Also, I'm sorry, also, I just received an email from, let's see, Brianna Brown stating that the YouTube stream of the meeting isn't working. So yeah, I just got that message as well.
Yeah, my screen kind of funny. It's like I've got a little square of the, what do you call it? The PowerPoint, but I can't really read it. It's like 2 inches by 2 inches.
Mine's good.
Did you put copies of the PowerPoint in for Councilman Johnson and I?
Yeah, we can do that.
You did do that?
I don't believe that we did.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So going just back over the budget process timeline, we started back in March of this year and adopting the calendar for this year, and then held a workshop on May 12th with the council. We presented the recommended budget back on May 19th. In June, we did looking at options for changes to the recommended budget and setting the priorities. And then today we're at June 16th for the presentation of the final recommended budget and its adoption. So the end of this current fiscal year occurs on June 30th, and the new fiscal year starts on July 1st. So per the council's direction, the $63,000 has been added to the police department to fund a new CSO position for 10 months with a net impact of the general fund of just under $60,000. The appropriations for the supplemental law enforcement safety fund has been increased by approximately $4,000. And the estimated beginning balance has been increased by just shy of $16,000 based on actual revenue received. $15,000 has been added to the general fund for training and equipment for the community services officer. $23,000 for the records tech position in the police department has been moved from the Measure Z fund to be funded by the general fund. And then an additional $140,000 has been rebudgeted in the general fund for the slurry seal projects that we have been working on for a couple of years now, and that have been rolled over into the next fiscal year. So that fund balance essentially balances out between the closeout for this year and then the upcoming budget. So the council for this year set the priorities for street planning and work, code enforcement, public safety, economic development, and personnel. So for street planning and work, the council in this budget has an additional subsidy of $150,000 for street work and a $140,000 carryover for the slurry seal project that I just mentioned. For code enforcement, this budget includes a 1 FTE increase for a community services officer. One of the discussions that came up at the last meeting was over supplies and equipment for that position. So we've estimated those figures to be about $15,000 for training and equipment for a new position. And there's already a little over $10,000 budget for abatement activity. So in terms of public safety, this public safety priority, this budget maintains the officer staffing level, 6.25 FTEs. So that's a historical increase of 1.25 over prior budget years. It absorbs the clerical position, which is no longer funded by Measure Z, and it allocates about $70,000 for City Hall safety improvements and the replacement of 2 police vehicles. In terms of economic development, the council did set aside funding and a transfer of about $300,000 from the general fund to create the Economic Development Fund. For this year, it has a budgeted drawdown of about $52,000. For this current year that we're in, it does not appear that we will be utilizing any of the balance for lending related to COVID-19. So that funding, so the fund balance for that particular fund will remain about steady compared to the current fiscal year that we're in. There's also been $34,000 for revitalization of the city's gateway signage and landscaping out of that fund. And also some other additional good news is that over the past few years, the council's been looking at economic development opportunities for the city of Rio Dell. And for this year, we have been able to realize some of the benefits of all of that hard work and all those discussions. And we have budgeted about $135,000 in cannabis-related revenues. So that would be fees and taxes. And that's again based on the current year's budgeted the actual receipts for cannabis-related activity in the city of Rio Dell. And then additionally, the council allocated $200,000 in contingencies, potentially for the implementation of a total compensation study.
Where did the 200,000, what fund is that in?
So that is spread across several different funds. And I don't know if Cheryl, if you have any additional detail on that, but it's basically spread across all the funds that pay personnel costs proportionally.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So on the big sheet, which is attached as part of the packet on page 51, if you look down the contingency column, which is towards the right-hand side, it's 90,000 in the general fund, 50,000 in sewer operations, 10,000 in streets, and 50,000 in water. And that distribution was based on a prorated salary cost, how much is in the current budget for salaries in those funds. And that percentage is what I used to spread the contingent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Go ahead, City Manager.
So the total recommended city budget for the upcoming year is about $4.8 million. The largest portion of the expenditures for the city at 31% is related to public works. Next down the list is going to be almost $1 million in police-related expenditures, and then so on and so forth across the other funding categories. So a significant portion of the public works portion is going to be items like the debt payments, which we pay 0% interest on state required debt that was placed on the city for the construction of the wastewater treatment plant and also upgraded water intake facilities. So the total budget for 2021 compared to last year, if you see on the left of your screen, is basically $4.8 million compared to $4.4 million. So an increase of about $350,000 over the prior year. In addition, for expenditures, for 45% of citywide funds are spent on salaries and benefits, another 27% on services and supplies, and 14% on capital projects. For the general fund expenditures, nearly half of the general fund is dedicated to police services. So the general fund is the city's discretionary funding pot. It's very typical for public safety services to comprise about half of general fund expenditures or more. What can skew this graph a little bit is that the general fund is making over $500,000 in capital investments for the year. So that's a pretty significant chunk of funding going towards projects this year in the community. So in terms of the use of the fund balance out of our $4.8 million budget, about $4 million of that is composed of recurring revenues, and then about $700,000 is use of fund balance. The reoccurring expenditures, on the flip side of that equation, you have non-reoccurring expenditures at about $761,000. So you're balancing out the use of the funds for non-reoccurring expenditures. So I'll go down on the list. We'll just go down the list of non-reoccurring expenditures. So there is budgeted funds to replace the public garbage cans in this year's budget. There's funding for City Hall recycling improvements. The rate studies that occur roughly every 5 or so years to do rate studies on water and sewer. There's the slurry seal carry forward that I mentioned earlier. There's an additional undesignated asphalt street resurfacing program. There's the RIMS carry forward for the update in the public safety software for the police department. We also have funding set aside for the gateway rehabilitation, a generator for City Hall, improvements at City Hall, security related, 2 police vehicles, and also public works vehicles. And then when we get to our public works, we have kind of our standard investments for vehicles, for water and wastewater plant projects, and I&I reduction projects, and various investments in ongoing in technology such as the SCADA remote operating system. So in terms of citywide revenues, the bulk of the, a little over half of the citywide revenues are related to sewer and water funds. So those are both separate enterprise funds that fund water and wastewater services. And then your general fund is really the other major revenue source for the city. And there's a couple other relatively minor funds that go in there, but streets revenue, what's dedicated for streets, again, via a state step formula, is about $270,000 for the upcoming year. So general fund revenues by type. So out of that pot, you have property taxes in lieu of VLF. That is a good thing for us right now during the COVID crisis. Property taxes are a pretty stable source of revenue for the city, and this city has a high proportion of property taxes that cover general fund revenues. In other cities, you'll see a higher dependence on transient occupancy taxes, which this city has very little of, and those revenues have been dramatically impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. But we also have sales tax revenues, and now in the general fund, 11% is a relatively new source of funding. 11% are related to cannabis fees and taxes that did not exist before. So again, your general fund revenues have gone from $1,159,000 last year to $1,234,000 compared to last year. So that's an increase of nearly $75,000, which Rio Dell is definitely bucking the trend of local governments in this area. And that is primarily due to the receipt of cannabis taxes. Certainly the COVID, when the budgeting process, we have adjusted our TOT revenues dramatically down, and then we have an estimated decline in line with the county's estimates, about 10%, roughly 10% in sales and use taxes. But even with those hits to the general fund actually for this year is growing. So that is pretty remarkable compared to some of the other agencies. So in terms of looking at the organizational chart, this is the organization as it would exist under the new budget. We've added the position of the community services officer and expanded that scope. We've maintained the records technician in the police department, and we're working on filling these positions. One of the difficulties certainly has been employee retention over the years. And so with this budget, if it's approved tonight, we do have a number of challenges moving forward. And a big chunk of that is really in terms of employee recruitment and retention to fill all of these positions and also keep them filled. So on your screen before you, we put together some graphs to discuss turnover in the departments and specifically with positions. And so you'll see in the graph on the left that the turnover rate, when cumulatively, has been, at least number-wise, in terms of numbers of positions, has been near 100% over the last few years. So certainly some positions have been able to be retained with the same personnel, but there are positions that we have been rotating through quite regularly. So on the left, you'll see the graph that depicts year by year the turnover by department. And the public works is going to be the brown section of the brown portion of the line, the police department, and then finance. And you'll see in 17, 18, we went through a lot of turnover in terms of 8 positions in the city turning over. So this has been, it really is a major challenge for the city moving forward to have consistent staffing and to have kind of that continuity moving forward because we know that there will be more turnover as people retire and move on. And the current level of turnover is just something that's really not sustainable. So on the left, or on the right side of the graph, you'll see the turnovers by position, and really in highlighting the turnover, really have the utility workers, police department, and wastewater operators have by far the highest turnover by position. So the council listed in this year as their priority personnel, and we are in the process of trying to schedule the presentation of the compensation study for the employees, hopefully as soon as July 7th, but it could be July 21st. So we're going to try to bring that to the council's attention as soon as possible so we can begin work on that. And that's really where we're at. I think ultimately, overall, the city's financial position is very strong. You have very healthy reserves, very healthy fund balances. You have economic development occurring in town, maybe not as fast as we would like, but people are making investments in the community where there really weren't investments going on before. So the trajectory for the town is looking good in the long run. And however, with the employee compensation, it's very clear that we have just a large amount of turnover. And one of the consistent complaints that I have received are pay levels, particularly for the top positions that have the highest degree of turnover in the city. So I do think there is a correlation and a relationship there associated with that high turnover rate with those positions. It's not to say that that is the complete piece of the puzzle, but it's definitely by far the largest one and the most important one in terms of having consistent staffing and having stable staffing. So it is our hope that we can, in passing and moving this budget forward, that we can begin working on the employee compensation and looking at the total compensation study and working with the council on coming up with a solution for this. So with that, I'll see if Cheryl has any other comments that she wants to add to the budget. But for this packet, we've included the entire budget for the city, and that includes our changes, but we've also included our master spreadsheet, our personnel allocation table, which the council's been presented before at the workshops. And we also have the departmental detail as well. So with that, I'll see if Cheryl has anything else to add to the discussion, and then turn it over to the mayor.
So the one thing that I found most interesting or positive when I was preparing this was if you go back to the general fund revenue slide by type, Rio Dell has a very good, diverse base. I mean, that's a pretty nice spread as far as like not having all your eggs in one basket. And I just think that that's really fortunate, and that's part of the reason that Rio Dell is not suffering as much from COVID.
Uh-oh. Thank you, Cheryl.
And other than that,
Cheryl, you're breaking up.
All right, Cheryl, I might have to mute you. All right, so
I think I'm gonna give it back to.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So with that, if there are any other questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, what we're asking that the council do tonight is approve Resolution 1453, adopting the fiscal year budget for 2021, operating capital budgets with the position allocation table, and approve Resolution 1455, 2020, amending and adopting the city master salary table.
Thank you, City Manager. City Council, questions? Mayor Pro Tem Woodall.
No, I wanted to thank Kyle and Cheryl for all the work they did. And Kyle, that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. City Council Member Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I likewise want to thank staff for a great presentation, and not just that, but for allowing the city to keep its head above water. You know, you read in the paper or see on television every day that the cities around us are struggling. They're offering golden handshakes. They're laying off people. They're trying to cut $600,000-$700,000 because they don't have any TOT. And you know, we're just in a fantastic position because of the leadership of our city staff, and they deserve all the credit. Thank you very much, Mayor Carnes.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Strawn?
Well, you know that I don't like $710,000 taken out of our reserves, and that I don't like that number at all. It's incomprehensible to me. So you know I'm voting no on this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, I looked the budget. I see most of there's a lot of stuff that's coming into the capital on the capital side, and I think that's good that we're able to spread some of that out. But particularly with the police vehicles, I mentioned in the past that we do a little bit of this infrastructure, or when I say infrastructure, probably meaning more of the vehicle and the public works department equipment that in the past we've had some times where everything kind of came due all at once, and we had to do a big adjustment. I'm not sure what year it was, but that we had to buy everything up for equipment. Now it looks like we're kind of spacing it out a little bit, and even though it is taken from reserves, I see the end result of our reserves is pretty close to where it was when we started. We haven't gone down a lot, and we're actually building to the assets of the city. So we don't have to give up a lot, as Mr. Johnson said, in the DOT, because we don't have but one motel. So I guess and we don't have CalPERS. We're not a CalPERS retirement fund. But overall, I think it's a good budget. Like to see the income come back. Like to see some of these empty buildings get built up. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I appreciate everything, Cheryl and Kyle and all the rest of the staff, because you all had input. And I think that sometimes you just have to spend money if you want, going to the grave with a full wallet doesn't get you anywhere. So sometimes I feel like you have to spend money to make your town better, to make the situation better. So I know it's a high number, but I'm good with it because, like I said, I think sometimes you just need to do what you need to do to keep yourself looking good, keep your city looking good. And I just appreciate what you guys have done. So if there aren't any other questions, are there any public comments, email or phone in? City manager or city clerk?
So I am looking, and what I'm going to do is place the public comment screen up there one more time.
Thank you. Wait for a moment. And
then
not seeing any.
So, well, unfortunately, I don't have dual monitors. So so folks, if you're interested in calling in, can call 1-888-475-4499, and then type in the following meeting ID number with the # afterwards to enter into this meeting to ask any questions. And so hopefully you have a pen and pad of paper at home to write this down. And then, but in order for me to check, I have to close the screen and look. So, so also you can hit *6 on your phone if there is any public comment. There is one number that I don't recognize, and it ends in 0391. So if that individual is interested in providing comment, I'm sorry.
Actually, city manager, that was from Mr. Caldwell, and he just commented that you did a good job with the budget.
Okay, all right.
That was from Kevin.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right,
City
so
manager, what I'll do, city manager, is if it's legally allowed, is we will continue on. But if comments comes in, we will take that comment and address it if it comes in after we move beyond it. If
Sounds good.
Legal. Okay. So is there a motion to approve resolution 1453-2020 and resolution 1455-2020?
Mayor Garnes, I would move for the approval of resolution 1453-2020, fiscal year 2021 operating and capital budget, along with resolution 1455-2020 adopting city master salary table.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Whittle,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Strand,
No.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-1. Councilmember Strachan opposing or naying, however you say it. And with that, we will move on to the introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 388 2020, amending Chapter 15, Construction Codes of the Rio Dell Municipal Code to incorporate California Building Code exemptions and to establish agricultural building exemptions. City
So
Manager.
thank you, Mayor Garnes.
I'm
And
sorry, that's page 84. Sorry.
yeah, page 84. I'm gonna check with, since we have Community Development Director Caldwell on the line. Kevin, I'm gonna unmute you and let you go with that.
All right, thank you, City Manager Knopf and Mayor Garnes. What I'd like to do is I'd like to continue this item to the meeting of July 7th. And there was one additional zone where this should be applied, and that's the suburban zone. So I'd like to take it back and modify the ordinance to basically be consistent with the suburban zone, which also allows general agricultural activities. With that, that is my recommendation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin Caldwell. Council, are we good with moving this on to July 7th?
No problem.
I'm good.
Councilmember?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Strawn?
I'd like to see where these zones are when you make this submittal again. I'd like to know where the zones in question are.
Absolutely. We can include a zoning map in the packet next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move this item to July 7th, our first meeting in July.
Thank
With
you.
that, thank you, Kevin, thank you. With that, we will move on to council reports and communications. Mayor Pro Tem Woodall.
Okay, I have had no meetings, but I would like to thank the chamber again for putting up all the flags for Flag Day. They did a nice job. And sort of along those lines, I've noticed that we have been leaving off the Pledge of Allegiance. And I assume that was because it was kind of awkward to do with all of us, but I would really
exactly
like,
why.
even if we're on Zoom. Pardon?
That is why.
How about if, I would be happy if maybe just the mayor said the pledge and we all, but I think it's important, especially at this time, for us to be saying the pledge at the meetings.
Thank you. And any other comment?
I have comment.
No, I meant to say from Julie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Julie, anything else?
No, I just feel it's really important that we say or that at least one person says the pledge at the beginning of the meetings.
I agree with Councilmember Woodall on the pledge that at least the mayor could say it.
Do you want me to say it? Okay.
No,
Okie dokie. Yeah, that's fine. Councilmember Wilson, do you have any?
Yeah, I got two things. One, we did have an HWMA meeting, and we passed the recycling and increase, which will be reflected to us in our bill, but I don't think it's going to be more than $1 a month. And I think I mentioned that last time, and also when we did the lady from Ecology reported to us that the recycling cost, particularly transportation, is creating a big issue statewide. So just an update there. The other thing that I have is I'd like to make a council, in addition to the next agenda. I went back through and looked at some notes. And on May the 5th, we had a report from GHD on the Safe Routes to School project. And in that, on page 24 of that packet, it shows in their presentation a picture of the ELO sidewalk area. And so it shows that there was an addition of 77 feet coming all the way down to the end of that entire vacant lot. So if there's a misunderstanding here, I'd like some clarification. And then also on the minutes or the agenda packet for May the 19th, it has the minutes from May the 5th. And it mentions, I don't know if I have the exact page number, but it's there. It comments that the because of the excess money with the bids coming in lower, we were going to be able to afford these different items, the library, the ELO, and it talked about extending the ELO boundary to the northern end of, I guess, ELO or wherever it went. So that's where I think maybe my misunderstanding could be in the clarification. So I would request with council consensus that we have clarification in our next meeting on GHD's report of particularly that sidewalk. Mayor Garnes.
That's it. Thank you. Edu, can we get a consensus there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
That's a consensus.
Thank
you very much. Okay, Councilmember Johnson?
No reports, but I am looking forward to a in-chamber meeting on July 7th.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Strawn?
Yeah, I haven't had any meetings. I've got an HCOG meeting this week, but we did have a nuisance committee. We are meeting over Zoom, nuisance committee. Just want, everybody to know that we're trying to stay on top of what's happening in town with those things. I think we were going to have some of the people who are on the committee wanted to also come on a Zoom meeting. I don't know if that's been discussed with you, city manager, but we just wanted to make all of our citizens aware that we do have a nuisance committee. You have an opportunity if you have an issue to file a complaint, and we will be looking at them individually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Garnes, can I have one more thing? When I mentioned the Pledge of Allegiance, can I ask for a consensus on that, or because there was just two things? Would anybody else want to go with the pledge?
Can we get a consensus on the pledge?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we have a consensus. Lovely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've been on different phone calls that you are all able to be on, so I don't know that there's any excess information. We know that things have been opening up, more things have been opening up, and we'll be on the county call tomorrow to find out, for example, on Thursday rather, for example, campgrounds, state campgrounds have been opened, but county campgrounds are not open. They will give us a guidance tomorrow, the county will, and so then we'll know from there. And I'm sure everyone knows all the stats because, well, they're out there for everyone. So, the county of Humboldt did they have a COVID minute campaign, and so we did a COVID minute, and we had the volunteers. The volunteer corps was there, and they showed the things that we are doing in Rio Dell. The Samantha, who is the public information officer for the sheriff's, said she did make the comment that we Rio Dell were doing more than other towns up here in Humboldt, should say, are doing with regard to just hands-on, being out there, trying to help seniors, and so on. And so she did cover that, and they showed the volunteers, they showed us filling hand sanitizer bottles and that kind of thing. So that was that. I too wanted to thank Nick Angeloff and his crew for putting the flags out. It's a nice feeling to go down, Main Street and feel like, something to be proud of. We have something that we're displaying to show our, like, for example, for Flag Day, our patriotism. So anyway, So I do appreciate that very much, and I think we probably all do. And I think that is, were there any call-ins, City Manager?
No, Mayor Garnes, there are not.
Okay, thank you. So I'm thinking that's it.
Mayor Garnes, move for adjournment.
Motion and a second? I guess I'll second
Second.
it. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Mm.
Thank you, Deborah.